Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1813 and today's date is March 12th, 2019, and the title of the episode is The Economic Setup is Complete. Well played, Patriots. Now, don't you just love it when you find a $20 bill in a jacket pocket you haven't worn in ages, or a purse you've not used for a long time? Well, imagine this, finding hundreds of dollars in the papers that are sitting in your file cabinet. I'm talking about that old 401k paperwork. That money is sitting there doing nothing. Our friends at Noble Gold can cast an eye over that lost paperwork and see if you qualify for a precious metals IRA with it. So they're offering one of these special Morgan Silver dollars for all qualified IRAs above $20,000. So dig out the old paperwork and click the link below to get started on your gold IRA. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, this entire plan, and I'm talking about the entire plan here, is to get rid of all the corrupt individuals, to get rid of the source of the corruption, and that is the central bank. Everything that we're watching, everything that we're witnessing is to get to that point where everything is drained. And nothing is a coincidence. Everything that we see, everything that we hear, it is being done on purpose. It's setting up certain individuals. It's setting up the central bank. And it's being done very slowly, very methodically. It's being done in military fashion. And when we start to look at what has been happening, we know the main goal is to go after the central bank. And yes, to get rid of all those treasonous traitor individuals. And we can see that this is where we are headed, and we're going to be talking about how the central bank was completely set up to take the fall. And guess what? It was done by the mainstream media. Beautiful planning. Well played, Patriots. But first, let's go out to the UK. Let's talk about the Brexit right now. The UK and the EU, they've reached an impasse in negotiations. So it looks like there's going to be no other deal except the deal they came up with. Now, we're expecting to begin the vote around 1900 GMT. This is 1500 Eastern Standard Time. And there are no amendments or anything. It's just May's Brexit plan. And this is how it has to go down. There are about 650 members of the UK House of Commons. 7 Sinn Féin MPs do not vote. 4 speakers do not vote. 4 MPs who count the votes do not vote themselves. Prime Minister May needs 318 votes to pass her deal, assuming all lawmakers who are able to vote, including 10 DUP votes, DUP, up to 65 ERG votes from a total of 110, up to 40 Labour Leave votes, and 4 independent votes. So we're going to have to see how this all plays out. And last time, she couldn't get the votes. Hopefully this time she doesn't get the votes. And why do I say this? Because this deal is not in the best interest of the people. It's in the best interest of the EU. And it's time for the people to be heard. And it's time to break away from the EU. But we'll have to watch and see what happens. We see right now that the U.S. National Security Council, they have issued a direct warning to Italy. Why? Because Italy is considering participating in China's Belt and Road Initiative. And this means that Italy will be moving away from the EU and joining the Belt and Road. There's a lot of countries that are joining the Belt and Road. Now, the National Security Council is the President's principal forum for considering national security and foreign policy matters with his senior national security advisors and cabinet officials. John Bolton, remember, he is the national security advisor. He's issuing the warning. And remember, the Belt and Road, it goes through all throughout Asia. It's going to be connecting North Korea. It's very interesting that Trump is saying that North Korea can become an economic powerhouse. Do you think North Korea is going to be joining up with China, their Belt and Road system? Do you think in the end that Trump, the United States, is going to be joining the Belt and Road? I do believe so. I believe the entire world will be united without the deep state, without the central bank, where they can trade freely, bilateral trades. And this is why Trump and the Patriots are fighting against the World Trade Organization, fighting against the World Bank, fighting against the central bank, fighting against the globalists, and so on. Xi Jinping, he's expected to travel to Italy on March 22nd through the 24th, and they're planning to discuss the plans. Now, I do believe that Trump and Xi, they're on the same page. I do believe that Putin is on the same page with them, and I believe there's going to be a coordinated effort to go after the central bank, to go after the globalist system, and create these bilateral trade agreements with all different countries. Trump has already started this. And we know the main focus is to get rid of the central bank. Now, something very interesting happened with the Federal Reserve. Tim Leissner and Roger Ning, they were banned from the banking industry by the Federal Reserve for their role in helping to divert billions of dollars from Malaysia's den of thieves, also known as the country's sovereign wealth fund. And these two individuals, they are ex-Goldman bankers. And they were doing this, and they were bribing governments. They were bribing officials in Malaysia, Abu Dhabi, and many other places. And so far, former Goldman CEO Lloyd Blankfein, who quit as Goldman CEO just as the scandal was ramping up, has not been indicted as of yet. Now, once again, it could be a sealed indictment, and we don't know that he's included with this. But this is very interesting. Now, the other interesting thing is that the Federal Reserve, they appeared on 60 Minutes. And the question is, why now? So Jerome Powell was interviewed by Scott Pelley, and he mentioned the fact that such discussions are rare, and noted the last time a Fed had appeared on such a chat was Ben Bernanke back in 2010. So why did he feel the need to do this now? We need to remember that Trump has been calling out the Fed. The Fed is now in the public eye. The central banks, they like to hide in the shadows, but this is impossible with Trump continually pointing the finger at the Fed. The public is starting to realize the Fed is responsible for the economy. When rates are pushed up, the economy slows. The stock market falls. The debt load right now is unsustainable, and the central banks around the world cannot divert the attention away from them anymore. Everyone is starting to wake up. People are starting to wonder why the central bank can print money and buy assets to save their portfolios of baby boomers, yet the public can't simply print money for stuff like healthcare, education, and roads. And remember, the Fed is not out there telling everyone that they're just creating currency out of thin air. They use terms like quantitative easing, stimulus, and many other terms to make it look like they're doing something completely different than just, pushing a button and having currency be created on a computer screen. But the monetary system is slowly being exposed for the scam that it is. The purpose of Powell appearing on 60 Minutes is to shine the light on what the Fed really is. And Powell said something very interesting. Now remember, this is on 60 Minutes. This is on mainstream media where millions of people are watching. And this is the perfect platform to show what the Fed has been doing, what they're going to do, and should we blame them? Now, what's very interesting, during the interview, the host tried to have Powell turn on the president, to blame the president for pushing a lot of pressure on the Fed. And he quoted Trump. And this is what Trump said. "No, I think the Fed is making a mistake. They're so tight. I think the Fed has gone crazy." Jerome Powell responded to this, saying, "I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on other elected officials or on the president. And the host said, "Isn't it your duty to respond when the president calls the Fed a much bigger problem than China?" And Powell answered with this response: "My duty is one that Congress has given us, which is to use our tools to achieve maximum employment and stable prices, and to supervise and regulate banks so they treat their customers fairly and so that they're strong, well capitalized, and can perform their critical function in good times and bad. That's my job." Now, he said something within this statement that's very interesting. Achieve maximum employment and stable prices. And of course, to regulate the banks. What has Trump been doing all along? He's been using the weapon that the deep state, the central banks, have been using all along. The Fed is responsible for having maximum employment. Over the many, many years, they manipulated this number to make people think that there is maximum employment. Remember, a part-time job is considered a full-time job. If you have 2 part-time jobs, it's 2 full-time jobs. If you haven't been on an interview within 4 weeks, you're no longer looking for a job. So they've been manipulating the unemployment figures for a very long time. Having Powell appear on a mainstream media outlet show, telling everyone that he's responsible for maximum employment, just set up the Fed and, of course, stable prices. Once everything starts to fall apart and the Fed starts to raise rates, the unemployment rate is going to shoot up. Prices are going to go crazy. Real estate is going to deteriorate very, very quickly. Trump will have the ammo that he needs. The people who watch this show now understand that it's the Fed's responsibility for all of this. And guess what? This is exactly what the Patriots wanted. They wanted people awake enough to understand what the Fed is responsible for. So when everything starts to fall apart, Trump can say, "Hey, what happened to the employment numbers? I was doing a great job. Now all of a sudden they're starting to go up as you raise interest rates. Look what's happening to the stock market. It's starting to fall as you raise interest rates. Look what's happening to real estate. It's starting to implode on itself as you raise interest rates." What's going on with the Fed? Are you working with the people or are you working against the people? And he's going to point the finger at the Fed. The Fed was just set up right now, and millions of people just heard this. They took it all in, and they understand what the Fed is. Remember, the Fed likes to hide in the shadows. And now the Fed is out in the open. And the Fed appeared on a mainstream media outlet channel. This can be replayed over and over. This was not a coincidence. This was planned. Remember, the plan is not just to have everything all at once. It's to push these individuals, these organizations, back into a corner so there's no escape. Because once the hammer falls, there's no place to go. They can't go left, they can't go right, they can't go forward, they can't go behind. There's no place to go. And this is how military planning is done. It traps the enemy. And this is what the Patriots are doing. They are trapping them so they can bring them down. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.